In this week's episode of This Week in MMA, we're recapping the week that was, previewing the week that is, and getting you set for Bellator London, UFC Greenville, and NEF 39. So, let's get into it. Alright, and welcome to another episode of This Week in MMA. As always, your host, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at CraigAllenFNP. And Matt, you can find him at MattAllenFNP on Twitter. And Matt, we had a great weekend of MMA because we didn't have a ton of cards and we were actually spoiled with a great one. So, to set up the show, what we're going to do today, we're going to have a recap of the weekend that was. We're going to get into our favorite new segment of the show, the Twitter Purge. We're also going to preview the week coming up. And like you can see to my side there, you've got Bellator London coming up this weekend. You've got UFC Greenville. You've got BKFC 6 that I really don't care about. We're not going to cover it.
A goat fighting a goat.
And the best part of the weekend, we're going to be live from Lewiston, Maine at the Androscoggin Bank Coliseum. Most people might think, hey, why is that a big deal? Muhammad Ali beat Sonny Liston in the rematch in May of 1965.
Where that famous picture comes from.
Yeah, you know that one. They took that picture there. There's an article at fightingitpicks.net. You can read all about that fight, but also about the card that's coming up. One of the big fighters that is on that card that you're going to want to take notice of, possible, Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series fighter. We've seen fighters from NEF compete in the UFC.
We just did.
In recent years, and as we're taping this, Jorgen De Castro getting a knockout win over Alt Meeks by leg kick. An awesome one there. We're going to cover that in more details coming up, and had the chance to cover his last NEF appearance where he won the Cruiserweight Championship at NEF 37 back in November, a knockout win over Ross Hilton. But the point being, you got to watch out for Josh Harvey, and we're going to preview his fight coming up later on in the show. But what we're going to do first is, like we said, give you a bit of the recap of Bellator 222. And, if we have a look there, Matt, we rated this card fairly well beforehand. This wasn't a tape delay card. It was one of the bigger cards that we've seen from Bellator, a return to NYC. And the last time that we saw a major MSG card from them, it was a pay-per-view before the DAZN deal, 2017. Obviously, Chael Sonnen was on that card. But, Matt, looking back at this one, giving it a letter grade, I believe we might have given it an A going in.
I think we did. I feel like that was justified even after the fact. I mean, most of the fights delivered. That's the only thing with Bellator. There's 70 fights on their card, so it is kind of tough to set your whole day aside. But for the most part, they were all really good. We saw a few big upsets. I mean, Aaron Pico get knocked out again. Mike Kimbrough fought. He's another really big prospect. No, went to a split decision, but still, he got a win, kind of a bounce back from his last performance. And then up near the top part of the card, I guess, Rory MacDonald defended his title. He looked better than when he fought John Fitch. I don't think he's back, per se. And then, of course...
Matt just deciding to go whip right through...
Oh, no, I was just speeding through, then we could break it down.
Yeah, okay. Matt just kind of speeding through, but... some of those notable fights that are on this card, even the first fight on the card, this was a guy that a lot of people were talking about as a washed-up guy, a has-been type of guy. And Phil Haas, a guy that trained, went to the same JUCO as John Jones, a guy who had tons of promise in World Series of Fighting, but just couldn't kind of get it together. So he comes back after a really long layoff, and man, looked great against Michael Wilcox. It was a TKO win by Dr. Stoppage at the end of the first round. A massive cut over Wilcox's eye, and it started to swell up quite a bit. For Phil Haas, this is one of those guys that, again, slowly build him up. And we saw, and we'll get into it, there's a reason why you slowly build up fighters. Phil Haas is one of those guys that hopefully we get to see him more and more. I think he's a stud. And at 185 in Bellator, that division just keeps on getting stronger. We're also going to preview a big 185 fight coming up this weekend, Bellator London. But that was one of those ones. Robson Gracie Jr. getting the win over Oscar Vera, another guy. Building him up slowly. We saw him make his debut in Hawaii back in December of last year. Wishy-washy.
But this one, it was pretty one-sided.
Yeah, pretty one-sided. Like you had said, Mikey Kimball comes out and gets, just massive knockouts. Loses his last fight. He fought John Duma, a guy who on the regional circuit, a lot of people in New England said, this is a guy you got to watch out for. It's a tough test, and it was. But you know what? He definitely learned from that. Gets a win over Sebastian Ruiz. After that, you had Haim Ghazali getting a first-round triangle choke. Legit BJJ guy, a guy that's trained out of Renzo Gracie's for a long time. Like, I know he's 46 years old, 11-6 as a pro. Had a really long layoff at one point of like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
His son fights with Bellator, who's 18, 19 years old. They fought on the same card, Bellator Israel, where we saw Patricio Freire fighting Emmanuel Sanchez. And my brain's just going into overdrive. But if you look at Jaime Gonzalez, gets a win over Gustavo Wurlitzer, a guy who he's 22 and 23 now.
Which tells you about all you need to know about him.
But a great win for him. Continuing on with this card, Lindsey VanZandt in her last fight takes on Tabitha Watkins. It was a fight where a division that Bellator doesn't have in women's MMA.
Yeah.
Lindsey VanZandt looked great. So now we have a promotional combo, and it was the first one where we had Ryzen sending someone over to Bellator, taking on Lindsey VanZandt. You had Rena Kubota. Kubota was highly touted, and JMMA fans went nuts in not a great way after this fight. I mean, were you surprised that VanZandt was able to win with such ease in this one?
I really was, because it was an extremely one-sided fight, and as you see later on, that kind of set the pace for, okay, maybe Ryzen doesn't have the same quality of fighters that Bellator has, but I mean, just a few fights later, you kind of realize that, yeah, they do. They still have world-class guys.
That fight really showed you that Lindsey VanZandt's a good fighter.
Yeah, really good.
6-1, like, she's good. I'd like to see them send Lindsey VanZandt over to Ryzen. Cool. One of the bits of news that, we're not throwing into the Twitter purge later on, but the fact that Patricky Freire going to get thrown over into the lightweight Grand Prix coming up in Ryzen.
You have one of the Pitbull brothers fighting with Pride Rules, so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome for sure. And in the next fight, Valerie Loureda taking on Larkyn Dasch. Let's break this down for a second. No, seriously.
I'm good. It was a better fight than I thought it was going to be.
Larkyn Dasch actually looked really good. For a fighter who's 0-2 now in professional MMA, she pushed the pace. In one judge's eyes, she won one of the rounds. One of the judges scoring the fight 29-28. The other two scoring at 30-27 for Loureda. Yeah. I will say, this is another one of those prospects you have to slowly build up, because you could see Valerie Loureda getting caught in some bad positions against Larkyn Dasch. And for me, Larkyn Dasch is one of those fights like TJ Jones against Jake Hager. I actually, honestly, I want to see more of Larkyn Dasch.
Here's the problem with Valerie Loureda. She can't fight moving backwards at all. And it's not one of those things like, oh, she's just not great at it. Like a Cowboy Cerrone, for instance, where like, okay, that's a position they're not good at. She just doesn't know how to. And that's such a massive flaw that she's going to have to work on. But she's got a lot of really good kicks. Of course, her Taekwondo is phenomenal, her karate, all that. But like you said, you really have to build some of these prospects up a lot slower than others. As we see on the next fight, kind of Aaron Pico just got kind of thrown to the wolves, and we see he's almost a 500 fighter right now, even though talent-wise, he should be 10-0. Loureda is one of these people who you really have to build them up slowly. But they're doing the right thing.
I mean, you look at Aaron Pico, a guy who, so he had that loss at Bellator NYC, we were talking about it. So first round guillotine right off the jump.
It happens.
And then he gets those 2 quick knockouts. So Justin Lin, fairly matched. Shane Crutchton, a guy who we've seen since then have decent showings. I mean, he won his last fight with Bellator, but able to get the knockout there. Beats Lee Morrison, a guy who, we talked about that fight before it happened. That was going to be a win for Pico. And then against Leandro Higo, I kind of cautioned against it, because Leandro Higo was a guy who was a champion RFA, LFA banner. He fought for the title against Darian Caldwell, 135. That was a tough fight, but he was able to get it done there. So he strings together 4 wins in a row. Then they put him up against Henry Corrales, which Corrales is legit.
He's a bad MFer.
He's going to be a guy in that conversation for the Featherweight Grand Prix coming up later on this year.
Even in that fight, I know we're probably going to rag on Pico a little bit, but he did drop Corrales in that fight. Like, he had positive moments. The problem is, and we were talking about this just before we started filming, Pico might have like the best just boxing in Bellator. He might have the best just wrestling in Bellator, but he can't put those things together. He's very like, I'm in one mode. I'm in boxing mode, and then I'm in wrestling mode. And his wrestling mode, he's not that good. It's not like he's getting off a lot of damage on the ground. Super good, pure wrestler.
Exactly. And the point of wrestling, you want to get those takedowns, you want to get position, you want to point. You saw Darian Caldwell later on this card. That's what he tried to do against Kyohei Horiguchi, and you saw it with Horiguchi. He was just able, with his footwork, with everything, put it all together, whereas Caldwell just went to that wrestling base, and obviously we saw at the same time
too after
he looked gassed as well. So for Aaron Pico losing to Adam Boric is one of those guys
he's so good.
Yeah, I mean, he's another one of those guys. You have to have him in that conversation for that Grand Prix.
And it's not like he just landed the flying knee and that's the only success he had in the fight. A lot of the fight was Pico just kind of holding him down. That's the other thing with Pico. I know his wrestling and his boxing is really good. His jiu-jitsu, I don't know who he's training it with. I know the story about how he went to Eddie Bravo and said that he didn't want to train with him anymore. So now all he did was wrestling. And it reminds me a lot of Sarah McMahon. You might remember Sarah McMahon, Olympic gold medalist, phenomenal wrestler, but
We did see her, I will say, get a submission in the flesh.
No, that's the thing. She can get submissions, and she has good head and arm chokes.
But the defense.
Exactly. She refuses to train jiu-jitsu because she thinks that wrestling's all she needs. We see what happens then. When she ends up on her back, with Mary Renault, for instance. Mary Renault is not a good wrestler. She's a good grappler, but she's not a good wrestler. She dropped Sarah McMahon, got on top of her, and then cut through her like butter. It's very easy once you get these wrestlers to the ground if they don't do jiu-jitsu.
And the thing for Aaron Pico, the questions that you have to have. So... time at Team Body Shop where he was, a wrestling type training partner for guys like Baby Slice, AJ McKee, friends with all those guys. Then he goes and trains separately with Freddie Roach, who comes out to the media and says, hey, this guy could be a Golden Gloves champ. And I talked about it on Between the Links last night, and I encourage you to go find that episode. Mike Heck is host, Davidson Baker, Keith Schillen, special guest, John Morgan. Yeah, it was a really fun episode. But the thing that I said was, he goes with Freddie Roach. Freddie Roach says Golden Gloves champ. He's got star power all over him. And it's easy to say with all those knockout wins. At the same time, think about Golden Gloves. It doesn't mean anything. Mike Jackson was a Golden Gloves champ.
Okay, so is Stipe Miocic.
To me, it doesn't mean...
It does sometimes, though.
A huge thing. Yes, sometimes it will. It was a way to pump up his tires. But at the same time, he just went in there and almost... his striking was almost blind to a fault against Henry Cross, where his defense was poor. Then he went to Jackson Wink, 8-week camp, and people say, oh, he's going to go on a full camp. He went on a full camp. He needs to take time off.
Yeah, take a year.
Take 6 months, and then have a full training camp. You have to have more breadth to your camp, and you can't just focus on the wrestling. We saw that. I mean, obviously Adam Borch knew that he was going to go to that wrestling. And we saw it with the flying knees.
What is he? 10-0 Muay Thai, 10-0 amateur, 10-0. Like he's never lost before.
It was a poor matchup, and I've heard rumors about Pico didn't want to take lesser competition. He just wants to keep
which
testing
is true.
himself.
Like Pico can't fight another guy who's 4-3. He's going to kill them.
And the other thing I'll say too. Listen, I know there's people. There might be a guy on the regional circuit that's 0-1, 1-2. There's a lot of people that aren't going to want to take that Aaron Pico fight. That was another rumor. But at the same time, Jake Hager coming up. He got two guys with two sets of initials in TJ Jones and JW Kaiser. And those guys have, boosted their stock. Not so much JW Kaiser because he didn't talk a fight. At least TJ Jones has fun.
He's a meat packer.
And he has fun on Twitter too. And he's more than likely going to get another shot with Bellator. So Aaron Pico, listen, if you're an amateur out there and you're watching this, or maybe you're one of those pro guys that doesn't have a ton of fights, put your name in that hat because chances are Scott Coker's...
You touch him clean, you can put him out and get a big name off it.
But Scott Coker's active on social media. He's a guy that's going to see this type of stuff. Tag Scott Coker. Tag Rich Chew.
Might as well.
Tag the guys that are making these fights.
What camp would you like to see him go to that you think could maximize his stock? Because I have a thought. I think if he wants to stay on the West Coast, I think he should go to Ruka and then do 10th Planet as his grappling. If you split time between those two, because he doesn't throw kicks. That's the problem with Aaron Pico. He doesn't throw kicks at all. If you go to Jason Perillo, who's a phenomenal boxing coach as well as an MMA striking coach, I really do think he would be one of the better matches for Aaron Pico.
For just, general MMA fighters, maybe or somebody in that boat where, not an extensive pro record. Ruka Sports, one of those gyms that it's an invite only.
Yeah.
Aaron Pico's going to be one of those guys that will get an invite if he puts himself out there. For me, I think Hard Knocks 365 makes a ton of sense. All sorts of great fighters in that range. Of course, you got Logan Storley, who competes with Bellator, a great wrestler. Michael Chandler, great wrestler.
And even veterans like Robbie Lawler and Michael Chandler who could help kind of develop those skills.
And we're feeding a fed horse at this point. And if you paid attention to Fight Night Picks at all, listen, Michael Johnson, a great coach and a great guy that you could learn from in this weight class as well. So I think Pico, Hard Knocks 365, but the problem right now is he could be burning bridges, just going from camp to camp.
Honestly, some fighters it works for them, some it doesn't. Maybe Jackson's is the place for him. He just needs to spend more time there, and maybe that is the case. But either way, he needs to take 8 or 9 months off at the minimum. Give your brain time to rest, give yourself time to rest, learn some new skills, try to add on to what you already have. Because like we said, skill-wise, he's already kind of fully matured. If you do take all the skills just one at a time. It's the meshing of all those things together. And I feel like he just needs time to do that.
One more point about Aaron Pico and people writing him off online. I don't think it's time to write him off. You can make comparisons. Max Holloway at one point lost 3 or 4 fights.
The difference is he wasn't getting finished.
Robbie Lawler at one point was getting finished and lost 3 or 4.
The difference is look at who Max lost to Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, and Dennis Bermudez.
Oh, I know. And even the Dennis Bermudez, it was a split decision loss, and even in that fight, that was prime menace. He was in the prime of his career. Guys. You look at Robbie Lawler too. Nick Diaz, he was supposed to win that fight, but man, that's Nick Diaz.
Happens.
They were tough fights for Lawler. And even Robert Whittaker, and Keith Schilling made a great point last night. Robert Whittaker lost some tough fights at 170 before he ultimately had to move on and start winning fights at 70 and 85. And now he's one of the best pound for pound in the world.
Do you think Pico could make 135?
I don't think he can. I think almost 55 could be a home for him.
I feel
maybe hydrating back up. We've seen it with bigger fighters recently and other fighters in general.
Caldwell.
Typically, your chin gets a little bit better when you're able to rehydrate.
I think so too, but I just feel like the case with him is it's not that his chin is bad. I think a lot of those shots that he gets hit with would knock out most people, especially if you take a flying knee from a guy who has multiple flying knee knockouts anyways, and if you duck into it, it's probably going to put you out. If you take a full right hook from Henry Corrales straight on the chin, it's probably going to put you out. It's more just the defensive or the lack of defense that he has for his striking. So he's definitely has a bright future. I'm going to lump him, though, into the same category as a Sage Northcutt, where they're promising young prospects, but they have so much work to do to get to that next level.
Yeah, and it's really tough there. I mean, we had some other fights there. Of course, you had Heather Hardy, the loss to Taylor Turner.
Heather Hardy has no ground game.
And I know, people still talking about Heather Hardy. Maybe the next New York card that you have, you want to boost somebody, you want to try and sell a fight. Heather Hardy's a great fighter to sell a fight. She's had to sell tickets forever. I mean, in boxing, that's just what you do. Yeah. Especially if you're going to be on the undercard, especially if you're fighting at home. The way that her contract's set up, she fights at the Barclays Center. Head back. Watch one of the first video episodes, the interview with Heather Hardy. It was a really fun one for sure. But, just a tough loss there. And then if we move on to that main card, I think it's a travesty that Horiguchi and Caldwell was the first fight on the main card. It's kind of a slap in the face. I mean, for JMMA fans, hey, get it out of the way. I guess you can go to sleep. But... listen, Horiguchi looked great in that fight.
Caldwell didn't look great.
Scott Coker said there's a possibility that Horiguchi in the next calendar year is going to have to defend that belt. Cool. A lot of people calling him out, including fighters further down this list. But overall, Horiguchi looked great. And, Dana White's talked about it in the past. Man, I don't regret cutting any fighters. This is one of those guys, man.
You probably do.
He looks great.
Him versus Henry Cejudo would be a fight.
Yeah,
I think Henry wins. But anyways, I feel like this is a big case of Darren Caldwell needs to stay at 145. I know he was flirting with the idea. He was doing, he had
the fight against Noad Lahat.
Exactly, and he, go up and down. But I feel like this was the first time that we saw maybe the weight cut did take an effect on him. He looked exhausted after a round. And I know Darren Caldwell, he's very explosive, he's fast, he's powerful, and that style never really translates to having great cardio. But I just feel like in this fight, he was using his own game plan, but it was still tiring him out. We see that, for instance, Yoel Romero. Does he have a great gas tank? No, not really. But if he can fight at his own pace, he can go 3 days. It really doesn't matter.
And that was the thing. Caldwell, you'll see him fight guys a little slower foot, guys that he can attack straight on. Horiguchi, different angles, dipping in and out.
Phenomenal.
Horiguchi's footwork is some of the best in MMA. Man, he just flies around
After
the cage.
That Demetrius Johnson loss, he basically just went back and reinvented himself. I mean, Demetrius Johnson beat the brakes off him and did whatever he wanted to for 4 rounds, 4 minutes and 59 seconds.
Talk about Pico. Maybe ATT's a place.
And maybe
test yourself against Horiguchi.
You might as well. Horiguchi looked phenomenal, and I do like this whole cross-promotion thing that we're starting to see. I know the UFC is never going to get involved, which is unfortunate, because I'd love to see Douglas Lima fight over there, and maybe he will if his contract runs out. But anyways, it's fun to see, because now we do get to know who is the best in the world, excluding with the UFC.
So fighters, we've talked about it already, and Matt and I talked about it before the show. There's a lot of fighters out there UFC maybe missed the boat on. Juan Archuleta, King of the Cage, 3-division champ. It's kind of tough to sign a guy like that. A great record at 22-1 coming into this fight, fighting the former bantamweight champ in Bellator, Eduardo Dudu Dantas, coming back off of, he had a terrible injury, then he won a fight, now he's fighting. Yeah, now he's fighting in this one, and Michael McDonald, man, I wish you were still fighting.
He broke his hands a lot.
But still.
He's making furniture. Don't be sad for him.
Juan Archuleta looked great in this one. He called out Horiguchi for the belt.
Makes sense.
I don't think it'll happen. I know he's talked about fighting at 35, 45,
I'll
55.
Fight Caldwell next.
Yeah, I think a Caldwell fight before the title is fair. It's going to be interesting to see where he slots into that featherweight, discussion. And then moving forward, this is the ultimate, UFC missed the boat. 11-0 as a pro, 11-0 as an amateur. A guy who can finish fights, a guy who's dynamic,
His
a guy who
scrambles
speaks
are insane.
incredibly well. Patty Mix beating Ricky Bandejas. And listen, I'll say this.
I thought Ricky Bandejas beat Juan Archuleta in his last fight. That tells you how good he is.
Ricky Bandejas, they're not doing him any favors.
They're not.
Like, Aaron Pico, they're doing him dirty. Ricky Bandejas, James Gallagher, here you go. And then he knocks him out.
Badly.
Okay, we'll give you Juan Archuleta.
And he looked amazing in that fight.
Split
he dropped
decision.
him. Yeah.
And then they give him Patchy.
A guy who no one knows but is amazing at fighting.
No. If you know MMA...
No, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
To the larger scope, no one knows who Patrick Mix is, but...
Mixed himself into title contention.
You're damn right
all of a sudden at 35.
And from, like, if you watch him, his wrestling's not amazing, his striking's not amazing, but it's in the scrambles. He's almost like Tony Ferguson-esque. If you go for a takedown, or maybe he does, and you can't secure it, and there's just a lot of scrambles going on, he's going to find his way to your back, and there's not much you can do about it once he gets there.
So Patrick Mix is one of those guys you have to keep an eye on. If you're a Bellator fan, you have to watch him. The next fight. Listen,
is a strength.
This is going to bring a lot of controversy, and this is a fighter that Bellator is really doing it well. One of the biggest guys as far as self-promotion marketing on social media. You can talk bad about him.
Honestly, there's a good chance if you get on Twitter you can fight Dillon Danis next.
Yeah, you can talk poorly about him. Max Humphrey took him on. Listen, I thought Danis should have got a TKO. I was surprised the referee didn't end the fight earlier, but he looked good, and this is a fight that makes sense. Against a guy who's 3-2, you put a guy who's 1-0. BJJ ace, give him to friend of the show, Gary Tonin. You know what happens, but realistically,
rips his leg off.
In this fight, it's great. Dillon Danis is calling out everybody under the sun, saying he's the
Jones.
hottest prospect in MMA. Keep doing it.
Well.
Dillon Danis is a smart guy, and listen, if people are hating you online, you must be doing something.
It's the Henry Cejudo effect. It's the Colby Covington effect. Whether they like you or dislike you, the tickets still cost the same. It really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. As long as there's eyes on him, that's all he really cares about.
Yeah, and realistically, looking at it next, Dillon Danis, put him up against anybody. You go ahead and fight him, Matt. Like, realistically...
Dillon Danis, you've taken everything I work for ever.
Just keep having fun with it. Keep booking fights that make sense. And I think we had a conversation on Between the Links last night. I'd said maybe send Aaron Pico over to Bellator European Series. Have him fight somebody over there that's good, but not too much of a test. Dillon Danis, a guy who trains out of SBG. We know he's a grappling coach with Conor McGregor. Guys like Artem Lobov, who won't need grappling this weekend, but who knows what could happen. But yeah, maybe put him in one of those European Series because he's going to sell tickets over there as well. Exactly. And if you have an Ireland card, which we haven't seen in a very long time, we'll get to that later on. Maybe he's one of those guys that can slot into a co-main event. In the co-main event with Bellator 222, Lyoto Machida taking on Chael Sonnen.
This fight made me sad.
Everybody said pick Lyoto. You saw it.
No shit.
Chael Sonnen, just like in the Adam Borich Pico fight that we keep going back to, kept going for the takedown. Machida knew what he was going to do.
And there was a body kick there, too, that hurt Chael early in the first round.
But Machida getting the win. He calls out, among others, Gegard Mousasi, calls out Ryan Bader.
I'd love both those fights.
And realistically, right now, both of those are warranted. I mean, Machido's look good. I thought Carvalho won the fight before that.
Lyoto Machida's old as shit, but he's not one of these guys who's, like, completely shot. Like, he still has quite a bit to give and to fight. I mean, I agree with you. I thought that he lost his last fight against Carvalho, but just the fact that you're having split decision fights with a guy who was champion one fight ago, I mean, it still shows the...
A guy who was 18-1 at one point on a huge win streak.
And maybe, listen, we all know Lyoto beat Ryan Bader already. He beat Gegard Mousasi already. Different eras. They were all in different points of their career. But you can't tell me that he's not at least the number one contender in both those divisions at this point.
No, 100%. I mean, at 85, I'd say it's a little bit closer. There's some guys knocking on the door.
But if you take in his star
and at 205, I mean, Vadim Nemkov's a guy seriously, I've been calling for
getting that fight over him
for the title shot. But yeah, he's going to get it over him based on that star power, that name recognition, and this was a co-main event billed as like a third main event.
Yeah, really. And here's the thing about Lyoto. He murders wrestlers. Like, he for some reason, he does extremely well against wrestlers. He's good at judging the distance. You can't take him down. If you do shoot, he's going to knock you out. He's a pretty bad matchup for Ryan Bader, even to this day. And I know Ryan Bader's been looking great lately. I would favor Ryan Bader in that fight, but Lyoto Machida could definitely pull off the upset in that. Gegard's a tougher one.
Exactly. And in our main event, so my question to you, and talking about it on Between the Links last night, and I hate to keep bringing it up, but it was one of the topics of conversation, the second question of the night. Rory MacDonald, Neiman Gracie. Gracie looked good.
I thought he did too.
His
striking was good too.
His striking was good. He was bringing all aspects of his game together. more so than in the Ruth fight. In the Ruth fight, it was more kind of defensive grappling. He looked really, really good in that fight. In this one, the first takeaway, Neiman Gracie looked great. The second takeaway, and I'm going to disagree with a lot of MMA media members, a lot of people thought Rory MacDonald looked good. This is a Rory MacDonald of old. And I said last night, and even John Morgan disagreed with me, I said right now, the way that it stands, if Rory MacDonald fights this way going forward, he's a 15 to 25 welterweight in the world.
I think he's a little bit ahead of that, but I agree with you. I think the days of Rory MacDonald being in the conversation of the best welterweight on planet Earth isn't a thing anymore. He might be top 10. He's definitely not top 5 at this point.
If we go through the UFC's rankings and even the Bellator division,
he's not beating Kamaru Usman.
He's not beating a lot. Like, seriously, 15 above, he's not going to beat any of those guys.
He could beat guys like Luke. He could beat guys like that just due to his wrestling advantage over a lot of them. But when you look at the problems that he had with a guy like John Fitch, and I don't want to use the word steroids with John Fitch, but like Kamaru Usman's just a jacked up John Fitch. Kamaru Usman would pick Rory up. And
the point being, so for the first 2 rounds, Rory MacDonald just kind of went in and out around the cage and just threw jabs, and everybody was excited about that. There was a point in, I believe it was the 3rd round, he had top mount on Neiman Gracie, all sorts of room to strike. He had his hips in the right place, his legs were in the right place, he was keeping him down, and he just kind of peppered some shots and fought the hands. Like, it was a weird fight out of Rory MacDonald. Look, he looked better than he did against John Fitch, and he looked better than he did in the Gegard fight. But man,
he's not beating Douglas Lima.
He got leg kicked a ton by Neiman Gracie.
Exactly.
What happened in their fight at Bellator 192? Douglas Lima chewed that leg up to the point where it swelled up twice the size.
It looked like a small animal was inside of his leg.
So yeah, I don't see Rory MacDonald winning the rematch with Douglas Lima whatsoever. I think Lima runs a truck through him, and I don't think. I think we might see a retirement out of Rory MacDonald after that fight.
If Roy gets finished as violently as I'm thinking he's going to by Douglas Lima, I can't see him fighting much longer after. Douglas Lima's good at everything, and if you look at his takedown defense, he's one of these guys who's weird because he's at the stage where he's not really adding more stuff to his game. But let's say he had a problem in one of his fights where, he got taken down. For instance, he got taken down a lot in the MacDonald fight.
Yep.
Korshkov couldn't get him down. He was lifting him up over his head and he couldn't get him down. He's really good at fixing the issues that he's had in past fights. And if he does the same thing going into the MacDonald rematch, I just don't see Rory being able to beat him.
Even like put Rory MacDonald up against a guy like Korshkov right now. I think Korshkov takes that fight.
I'm going to ask you to calm down, but
still, it's a really tough matchup for MacDonald at this point in his career. And listen, Bellator 222, we gave it an A at the end of the night. I think it was a great card.
Yeah, I think it warrants that grade.
That's what we had for MMA. That does it for the recap. Let's get into our favorite new segment, the Twitter Purge.
It's time for the Twitter Purge.
All right, Matt. So, the Twitter Purge, our favorite new part of the show. And listen, as we're filming this, Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series just started. And oh, by the way, a picture of Jorgen De Castro from yours truly. And I think that hopefully by the end of tonight, the UFC signs Jorgen De Castro at 265. I cross my fingers that we get a cruiserweight division, but I don't think it'll happen.
No, you don't need one because there's 5 fighters in it. But keep on going.
Regardless, Jorgen De Castro. So get the chance to see him at NEF 37, win that cruiserweight belt, inaugural cruiserweight belt, the only cruiserweight belt that I've seen in a major MMA promotion or regional promotion at this point. And a great moment for him there in Portland, Maine.
He just broke a man's leg.
Yeah, beat Alton Meeks, who, for his first 3 pro MMA fights, all first-round knockouts. You looked at his amateur career, all finishes, except for, I believe, his first fight was a decision.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Former Division I football player. They really played off of that, and a leg kick finished him there. So hopefully the UFC signs De Castro, a guy from Cape Verde, a guy who, you know what, he does speak well. He's a really, really humble guy, a guy who trains and lives in New England now. And I think it'd be a perfect signing for the UFC at this point.
Yeah, I do too. Maybe he's not going to be a champion, in the next 2 or 3 years, but he's one of those guys who could be kind of a project for you, kind of build him up over the time. And the thing they always like to say about Tuesday Night Contender Series is show off here and then you get a title, or not a title, you get your contract to the UFC. You can't do much better than finishing a guy with a leg kick.
No, and he was throwing, effective kicks before that, effective knees.
He only hit him with 3 clean ones too and put him down.
Yeah, he's throwing overhand rights to just kind of gauge distance. So, a great fight out of him there. Hopefully, like I said, he does get that contract. And then moving forward, but backing up a little bit, this is the thing that I noticed. So, Chael Sonnen, we didn't even mention it. After the loss to Lyoto Machida, he retires. And I noticed he was starting to take his gloves off. Figured that was what it was going to be. Not even just Kevin Iole, but Yahoo Sports in general took a very staunch stance against Chael Sonnen. So Kevin Iole wrote an article about the fact that Chael Sonnen, the biggest drug cheat of all time, hanging up the gloves. And a guy who, I've gone back and forth with in a positive manner on Twitter, Elias Cepeda, writing about the fact that Chael Sonnen was a racist during his MMA career, his fighting career.
Yeah.
Now, we all know that Chael Sonnen is a great trash talker. He's going to have a great career post-fighting. He already does
and
with
he did
ESPN.
fail drug tests. Like, we're not denying that happened. It's just once a guy retires, and I think Chael was the one who said this, which is kind of appropriate that we're using it again. When a guy retires, just like it's like someone died. You don't say negative things about them right away. Like, give it time to breathe a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. Listen, I mean, he took testosterone, and then after the fact, kind of went on a tour and said, yeah, I took testosterone.
Yeah, everyone also did back then.
Yeah, it's kind of like baseball pre-steroid era,
Kind
or
of.
during the steroid era, before it was illegal. I mean, you could take it, and it wasn't a big deal, but Chael Sonnen, then USADA came in, and then you had to kind of clean up your act. So, listen, I get it. There's a lot of fighters. I mean, Kevin Iole could have written an even more scathing article about John Jones, realistically.
Kevin Iole really took this opportunity to be like, hey, look at me, though, too, guys. That's what I feel personally. I feel like it was in poor taste what he wrote, that's all.
It was kind of a weird look that they had two articles on the same day with Yahoo Sports come out with such, hardline stances against Chael Sonnen.
We could talk about how Chael Sonnen revolutionized the way that MMA's promoted, especially nowadays. He was the first person in the trash talk era. There's been many people who've kind of replicated what he did. He very much a pioneer in that regard. He set the record for highest gate, most pay-per-view. I mean, he did a lot of really great things in the sport, and yes, he did some negative things, but for the most part, I mean, Chael Sonnen really did change the sport as we know it. And did he win every fight? No, he didn't, but you always felt connected to his fights, and there was never a Chael Sonnen fight that never felt like it wasn't a big fight. Like, they always had that big fight feel. Even in the Machida fight, like, it still felt like a big fight, even though both guys are into their 40s.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, moving forward, a guy, like we said, a guy who's selling the fights, always on Twitter, Dillon Danis, and listen, a great win by Armbar that we saw over the weekend, but still selling that fight, still showing those highlights. He's a company type of guy, and a type of guy that, listen, a lot of people hate him on Twitter. This is a Twitter purge. I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah, and again, it's the same thing as like the Henry Cejudo thing or the Colby Covington thing. You might not agree with it, or you might not like the things they say or they do, but they're getting a reaction out of you, and that's really all they care. And they're doing the shtick well. If you are tuning in to see them, win or lose, they're doing their job.
Another thing that happened over on Twitter, of course, friend of the show, James Lynch, fellow Canadian, had Gegard Mousasi on the Score MMA program. Gegard Mousasi does not like drug cheats.
Does not pull punches when he talks about them.
And one of the things that came out in the past week, and we haven't mentioned it yet, but TJ Dillashaw basically coming out and saying, listen, yeah, I took EPO, and I know it was illegal, but I had to take it. I had to take it, or I wouldn't have been able to fight.
Here's the thing about anemia. I have a friend who's a professional golfer. He had anemia. Do you know what you do? You take iron pills. You don't take EPO. That's all you have to do. You're pretty much fine as long as you take them.
Yeah, TJ Dillashaw knew what he was doing was cheating, and listen, totally agree with Gegard Mousasi's assessment of the entire situation. Great interview by James, who's doing great work over on The Score. And listen, being Canadian, growing up as a sports fan, The Score was the cat's ass. And I think
2 weeks since you said that.
I think what James is doing over there is great. And make sure you give him a sub over on YouTube. We'll have something over in the pop-up there as we continue on. Rodney James Egger doing great work on his own over on Twitter, covering the first episode of Season 3, Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. And listen, Dana White had a lot of different things to say this week. So first of all, they opened the new UFC Apex Center. You get to see inside of Dana White's office. Interesting to me, the fact that he had a picture of McGregor and Mayweather up there. Real selling point that boxing's more important than MMA in his office. But he kind of talked about the fact that maybe we have Snoop Dogg back with Snoopcast. I don't. Apparently, it was really expensive to have him. And
really, Craig? You think it would be cheap to have Snoop Dogg to commentate fights?
Listen, I know another tweet that was put out there. I know Front Page MMA was one of the ones that tossed it out there. I had the quotes from Paulie Malignaggi saying, listen, the MMA community's stupid for actually buying this fight. Snoopcast, kind of dumbed down fighting.
Very much.
And I think it was kind of negative in that sense. I know it's going to sell to more people, and I love that. We were bragging up Dillon Danis a second ago.
But do you really think Snoop Dogg being on Fight Pass anyways is going to sell that many? Like, I don't think it's bringing in that many extra eyeballs that it would be worth going out of your way to bring him back.
No, but listen, real recognizing real, Rodney James Gallagher, give him a follow over on Twitter. He's doing great work this past week with the first episode of the Contender Series. And then the biggest thing for me lately that we've seen kind of popping up on Twitter here and there. So first of all, Deron Winn was supposed to be taking on Marcus Perez in his UFC debut. Marcus Perez breaks his leg. Then Bruno Silva, they signed him from M1. And Matt and I have watched a couple of Bruno Silva fights in a row. Listen, man, he beat Alexander Shlemenko to a pulp.
He would have beat Deron Winn so badly.
Then he beat Artur Frolov to win the belt to a pulp. So, yeah, I was super excited that fight got announced. I was really looking forward to Bruno Silva's UFC debut, and I'm sure we will see him.
He's still in the UFC.
Backed out due to injury. So, then there were rumors. And, James Lynch kind of alluded to it. Hey, it's probably going to be Eric Spicely. I know Nolan King did. There were quite a few names that said, hey, it's probably going to be Eric Spicely. Eric Spicely went 2-4 in the UFC. Had a win over, like we had mentioned before, Thiago Santos. A couple tough losses. He's a great grappler. He really is. A guy who trains at a TriStar full time. And since leaving, he went back to CS where he was before. 2 big wins, including a first-round knockout of Cial Magalesh, a guy who fought with the UFC at one point, a main training partner of Glover Teixeira, and they both live in Connecticut full-time, which is weird to have 2 Brazilians living in Connecticut full-time.
They stick it like a sore thumb, I guarantee you.
But listen, Eric Spicely coming into this fight against Deron Winn, it's going to be a really tough one because if you look at Winn's last fight, he took on professional wrestler, former UFC fighter, Filthy Tom Lawler, at Golden Boy Promotions, number 1, Liddell Ortiz 3. And listen, Deron Winn mopped the floor with him. He's competed with 5 different organizations in his first 5 fights. He's had fights in Bellator, LFA, and of course, like I said, Golden Boy. I'm really looking forward to him with the UFC. If you want to read a great article about his debut and his main training partner and really good friend in Daniel Cormier, check out Mike Pendleton's article that just came out today. But yeah, this is going to be a tough one because you got a pure wrestler, a guy who was looking forward to competing in the 2016 Olympics in wrestling. Didn't work out for him. Former All-American, in university, college champion wrestler. But he's taken on a grappler in Eric Spicely, and that's just a tough matchup.
This is a way better fight for him, though, than the Bruno Silva one would have been.
100%.
Like, this is pretty winnable for Deron Winn. I don't think that fight would have been. Spicely, like you said, he's good on the ground, but he's not a great guy off his back. So if Winn does get the takedown, I doubt that Spicely will be able to throw up a triangle or something Tony Ferguson style. I feel like this is a pretty good first fight for Deron Winn. Eric Spicely's not like a household name, but he's a guy people might recognize from past fights, especially due to the Santos win. So it's not like he's beating just some candidate the UFC sign. Like, he is beating a legitimate fighter if he does win this one. But, yeah, I mean, it's a good fight. It's a good first fight for Deron Winn. If Eric Spicely can get the win, it kind of cements him as he's back in the UFC, which would be nice to see. So, yeah, it's kind of positive all around.
So with that kind of transitions perfectly into UFC Greenville. So let's get into that. Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Strikeforce Energy. Head on over to the website, strikeforceenergy.com. If you enjoy the flavor of freedom, the company's veteran owned and everything's made in America. They've got great apparel. You can turn any 16.9 ounce beverage into an energy drink. There's no sugar, no calories, no stirring or no shaking required. They also have a line of different products as well as Strikeforce coffee. So if I head into my cart, I've got a 4-count sample pack. I've got a 20-ounce coffee mug. And if I head into that checkout, use the promo code FNP, click to apply, and you're going to save 20% off any order. That's FNP at strikeforceenergy.com. All right, so UFC Greenville coming at you from Greenville, South Carolina, coming at you in the afternoon. It's an early card. And realistically, if you go on the UFC's website right now, listen, I mean, they don't even have a picture for Ariane Lipski, who's had a fight in the UFC. They have Deron Winn taking on Bruno Silva, which isn't happening. And Andre Ewell, who's had 2 fights in the UFC and beat a former champ. They don't have a picture for him. So
I think you could beat Hennon at this point.
We're not going to spend a whole lot of time in UFC Greenville. This is a D-plus card at best. It's not a good card. It's one of the worst cards I've seen in a while from the UFC. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on some of the fights that we like.
Yeah.
And listen, there's 3 fights in a row that actually aren't too bad. So Alan Crowder coming off the win over Greg Hardy. It's a DQ win, but he did look good in that one. He was winning that fight before the illegal knee. Taking on Biggie Boy, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Listen, I said pick Jairzinho Rozenstruik against Junior Albini. Was I right? I was right. And he knocked him out. I talked about it on Between the Links last night. This is going to be a come-from-behind knockout win for Jairzinho Rozenstruik. former kickboxing champion. He's an all right fighter.
I don't think this is gonna be a comeback. I just get him with a straight right, knock him out.
I think Rosenstruck's going to be one of those guys that's going to be a 10 to 20 type of guy. He's not going to crack that top 10.
He'll be like a Marcin Tybura,
Yeah.
Maybe gets into the top 8 if he gets lucky. If he fights an old Andrei Arlovsky who's strung together a few wins, but yeah, he's not going to be champ.
I think it's going to be a fun
Great
fight.
nickname.
But listen, Biggie Boy is going to be able to get the win there from Suriname. So pretty neat stuff there.
Could not find it on a map if you paid me.
Next fight on the card, you've got Matt Wyman. You know, guys who mispronounce his name as Wat Myman. Matt Wyman taking on Luis Pena, the Violent Bob Ross. And Violent Bob Ross, thank goodness he's moving back up to 45. Because 35 for a guy who's 6'3" is a tough cut. And he wasn't actually able to make it in his last one. Matt Wyman, we haven't seen him in 4.5 years. That leaves a lot of question marks.
Luis Pena needs a win, though.
Maybe Matt Wyman knows something that we don't know. Maybe he's been
I'm sure he knows a few things that I don't know.
Maybe he's been doing this super slick training that we haven't seen for 4.5 years.
Simmer down.
I think Luis Pena is going to be able to get the win here, and I think he's going to be able to get it done by submission.
Yeah, he's going to get the win. He'll do it by finish. You can't come off 4-year layoff and then fight Luis Pena and expect everything to be normal.
No, 100%. And, you know, you've got Ashley Yoder in the next fight. She's taking on Siri Kondo. It's kind of a non-starter in that one. But listen, this is your fight tonight. And I talked about it last night between the links. John Morgan agreed. All the guys agreed. This is going to be your fight of the night. And listen,
I'll disagree.
It wasn't a tough pick because this fight is going to be on ESPN 2. Not Big ESPN.
It's going to be on Biggie Boy's back because they could probably fit on there.
This is the featured prelim, and of course they usually stack it there. But Dan Ige taking on Kevin Aguilar. Kevin Aguilar, 9-fight win streak, hasn't lost in 6 years, former champ in LFA. Dan Ige.
His nickname isn't Jag Aguilar, which is always a positive.
Dan Ige looked great since his Contender Series win. I wish he would fight Julio Arce again and again and again,
nice.
Even though it only happened once. And he looked insane in his last fight. He's got a performance of the night bonus in his UFC tenure. Matt, this is a really tough one to pick.
Dan Ige's going to win, though.
You think Dan Ige is going to win this one? As far as those odds are concerned, really close. Aguilar is a slight favorite at -150. This is your fight of the night. I think it's going to be a really fun one. If we move on even more, you've got Kevin Holland taking on Alessio Di Chirico. We haven't seen the Italian fighter in quite some time. I believe it's been about a year and a half.
He beat Julian Marquez in his last fight, the Cuban Missile Crisis.
And we haven't seen him since. Kevin Holland, obviously, it takes grit to fight Thiago Santos on short notice, but he has looked good. I think it's a winnable.
Great in his last
it's a winnable fight for Holland, who's -225 at this point in time. Then you've got Andrea Lee taking on Montana De La Rosa. You've got Brian Barberena taking on Rude Boy Randy Brown.
That could be fight of the night, but I feel like Brian Barberena's going to knock him out pretty early.
I think he will as well. And then realistically, I mean, like I said, it's kind
of
it's one of those D+ rated cards. For me, this is the fight that I think could be a lot of fun because you've got John Lineker and Rob Font running back. Font coming in on short notice in this fight,
Lineker
coming in on short notice. But if you look at this one, Rob Font's going to have a distinct, and listen, anybody that fights John Lineker...
He did in the first fight, though, and it didn't really
John Lineker, anybody that fights him at 35 is going to have a big height and reach advantage. Rob Font's one of those guys who's put it together in his last fights. You saw it, and it's tough, but you saw it against Sergio Pettis in the last one, dismantled him. I think he's riding a wave right now.
John Lineker's going to put his head 9 rows into the crowd. Craig refuses to see it because he saw Rob Font live, and he's a fan. I think John Lineker's going to win this fight very one-sidedly. Rob Font has a problem with people who apply pressure on him. We've seen that most of his fights. Even in the Thomas Almeida fight, Thomas Almeida can't take a shot anymore, but when he was moving forward on Rob Font, it was giving Rob Font a lot of fits. Now, I will give you this. If Rob Font sticks behind the jab for most of the fight, does a lot what he did with Sergio Pettis, he can win this fight. Don't get me wrong. He has really good kicks, too. What he likes to do is he'll throw like double jab and then a head kick, and it works really well. He's phenomenal at it. It's just John Lineker only loses to the best of the best. And I know he lost not that long ago to Corey Sandhagen, but I mean, I thought he won that fight, and he looked really good in that fight. So I don't see Rob Font getting it done personally. He definitely could. I do think this is going to be fight of the night personally, but I'm picking Lineker.
And I mean, you look at Lineker's last 4 fights. So he fought TJ Dillashaw,
a juicy boy even back then.
Marlon Vera, he got the win. Brian Kelleher, he looked great in that one. And listen, we'll throw back the praise. Go back and listen to the Score MMA podcast. Brian Kelleher and James Lynch, they had a great breakdown of this card. And then John Lineker fought Corey Sandhagen. I thought Sandhagen won that fight, and I know I did pick Sandhagen to win in that one. But it's got nothing to do with seeing Font live. I just think he's looked good of late. And that's why I think he's going to be able to get the win here. But The one that leaves me is kind of a head scratcher.
No, I'm the same way.
Your main event, Hanato Moicano taking on Chan Sung Jung, CSJ, the Korean Zombie. I think they call him TKZ more than anything. But listen, Moicano faced Jose Aldo, and Jose Aldo ran a truck through Moicano. Chan Sung Jung fought Yair Rodriguez, was winning the fight, and then Yair said, "See you later." Started the chainsaw at the end of that, and got the finish. Hanato Moicano is good at a lot of things. He is. He's not good at some things.
Here's the thing. The things he's good at, the Korean Zombie's also... Like, they're very similar fighters. The only thing that's different is Hanato Moicano has really good leg kicks. Korean Zombie's good at checking them. That's kind of the problem.
Yep.
When it comes to grappling, they're both good, like really good.
Moicano definitely has the advantage.
I think Moicano has the advantage unless Korean Zombie takes him down. If Korean Zombie's on top, I don't think Moicano's going to be able to get a lot done. But if Moicano's the one going for the takedown, if he gets on top of the Korean Zombie, I think he can do some damage there. If the fight stays on the feet, though, the one thing the Korean Zombie has, way more than Moicano, Korean Zombie has knockout power that just Moicano doesn't carry the same type.
The other thing with the Korean Zombie, you're going to see forward pressure. Yep. You're also going to see volume out of him, more so than Moicano. And if you look at the odds right now, about a 2-1 favorite is Moicano in this fight. I think it's fair as well. I mean, you look at the rankings, number 5 Moicano, you think of the 2 losses. He was winning the Brian Ortega fight before he got submitted. And listen, don't ever tell me, oh, well, he lost anyway. Listen, Aaron Pico was winning the Borch fight before he got knocked out.
Flying knee.
But still, we keep going back to Pico. The point in this fight... It's going to be a good one. I mean, I'm glad this is a 5-round fight. I don't think it's going to be finished under 3. We're going to see those championship rounds.
Both guys have good cardio. Like, there's some main event fights, like JDS versus Francis Ngannou. That's a great fight to put on a pay-per-view as, like, a co-headliner, but I don't really feel like that's the best use of a main event, just because you know both guys are probably going to get tired after, like, the second round. These guys don't have those problems. I mean, both guys can fight for days. It's not a problem for either guy. Currently, coming into this, showing up to Craig's house, I was all for Hanato Moicano. But the more I think about it, I really do feel like the pressure from Chan Sung Jung is going to get to Moicano. We've seen, I mean, that was kind of how Jose Aldo fought him. Leg kick, leg kick, leg kick, press him back against the cage, and then start landing their big hooks. That's kind of what Chan Sung Jung's bread and butter is. A lot of leg kicks, a lot of going to the body, too. And he's one of the few guys, we mentioned a lot with Jeremy Stevens. He's volume, but he also has power and cardio. It's a weird thing. A lot of guys have 2 out of the 3, but not many people have all 3 of them.
Especially at 145 as well. And it's kind of funny because, both same division. But...
Yeah, Max Holloway, he's another guy. That division seems to have a lot of them. But you know what I mean? It's kind of a rare skill set to have all 3 of those things. And I feel like Chan Sung Jung has what it takes to beat Hanato Moicano. I'm saying Chan Sung Jung TKO round 3.
I think the odds in this one, to me, it's a flip of a coin.
I agree.
I think it's the fact that it's almost like a mystery as far as the Korean Zombie's been concerned because he had that long layoff, then he had the Rodriguez fight
pretty badly in that.
Too. It's going to be a tough one to try and pick for me. I think Moicano's going to be able to get it done, and surprisingly, and maybe not, submission. Submission. And if I had to try and pick the rounds, maybe even 4 and 5. I know that, the cardio, the power, the volume from Chan Sung Jung, but even in that Yair Rodriguez fight, they kind of started to fade a little bit near the end.
This is the only thing. At least we've seen him in a 5-round atmosphere, and he's done very well. And even in the Yair fight, like, you're going from an insane pace to a crazy pace. Like, you're still doing way more than 90% of people are able. We've never seen Hanato Moicano fight 5 rounds before. And that's always an X factor. A lot of guys, you say that, and they turn out to be fine. But Moicano, it's one of those things you've just never seen before.
So, UFC Greenville, a D-plus card. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. You know what? Let's get into Bellator London. These episodes brought to you by Spretzbox. Head on over to the website, spretzbox.com. All you have to do, click to get started. You can either order one of their boxes that has over $100 in value, or maybe you're interested in a single item, like these great socks. So, click on them, add them to your cart, head on over to the checkout, and then all you have to do is enter in the promo code FNP as follows here. You'll save 10% off your first box or your complete first order. That's spretzbox.com. So, Bellator London, and listen, if we look at it from the jump, let's go into this main card. So, Mousasi, Lovato Jr., you've got Paul Daly, Eric Silva.
It's a weird picture of Paul Daly.
Jeremiah Labiano. Melvin Manhoef, Kent Coppinen. You've got Mike Shipman taking on Costello Van Steenis. Fabian Edwards, Jonathan Bosuku, Charlie Ward, Justin Moore, and you've got Aaron Chalmers taking on Fred Freeman. And if we look at the prelims, listen, this is no slouch. Bellator had good prelims on their last card.
They did.
Alfie Davis, Jorge Canella, and if we go through it, Bungard Leary, looking forward to that one. John Redmond, a guy who's a bigger name. Grayson Malambo. You look at it, Glory Buffando from the UFC. Walter Gahadza taking on Oliver Enkamp, another UFC guy. Terry Brazier, former guest of the show, taking on Alessandro Botti. You got Kate Jackson, Lena Ovchenkova. You've also got Nathan Rose, Luke Ord. Looking forward to that one. Burlinson, Lewis, Denise Keelholtz, Bellator kickboxing champ, taking on Brioni Terrell. And then we're back to the start. And listen, I mean, we could go through this card fight by fight, give you analysis, give you picks. The point that I'm trying to make is it's a way better card than UFC Greenville.
Yeah, much deeper.
Only thing going against this card, it's by tape delay.
Yeah, which is Bellator, get your shit together. Like, you have one job. Just show the fights when they're on.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous that they are by tape delay. And if we go back to those prelims, I mean, Alfie Davis, a guy who shined, he won his first fight over in Bellator. I think this is a winnable fight for him. He's a guy you can build up at 55 over in Europe. Denise Keelholtz, we talked about her. I mean, she's a kickboxing champion for Bellator. Her striking's great. Matt, you made a point before you came onto the show. What's the one thing that people should know about Denise Keelholtz as far as her MMA is concerned?
Her grappling is non-existent. That's pretty much all you need to know. I mean, if you can lock her up, even in the clinch, she seems like a fish out of water at that point. And she doesn't have big power. It's one of those people who, she has phenomenal technique, but she doesn't really have the power behind the technique to put a lot of these fighters in MMA away. I mean, we saw in the Vita Ortega fight, yeah, she was getting off on her, but all Ortega had to do was get a clinch and take her down, and it's a pretty simple win.
And now Vita Ortega gets a title shot.
Exactly. Well, she already did.
Yeah, I
lost.
know. Still. Well, she got a title shot off of that. But
which is a weird person to get a title shot off of, but anyways.
Still, point being, a lot of great names on this.
Yeah, there really is.
Nathan Rose is one of those fighters that you really should watch.
Kate Jackson.
The fight to me is Kate Jackson.
One scrappy gal.
Listen, she's been great with Bellator.
She has.
She's been really good. I mean, let's look at, her last fight.
Anastasia Yankovla.
A lot of people thought she was going to lose against Anastasia Yankova. Or Anastasia Yankova, mixing names up. Against Lena Ovchenkova. This is a good fight, but we haven't seen her fight the Ukrainian in 2 years.
Yeah.
Kate Jackson keeps it rolling. She's one of those fighters. She was on one of the recent seasons of The Ultimate Fighter. It was 27.
They all mesh together at this point.
Yeah, but realistically, she's one of those ones that I'm almost surprised she hasn't been in title contention yet.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
She's going to get her due, and I think she's going to be the fighter that actually causes fits for Ilima McFarlane. Like, more so than Valerie Loureda, Vita Ortega, Lara, fighters that we've seen lately. Kate Jackson and Juliana Velasquez are the two fighters that I see causing her the most problems, and I think will be the two most likely to get title shots coming up soon.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, and like you said, it's kind of surprising that Kate Jackson has that title shot. I know we're big on Ilima McFarlane, but the honest thing is her division's not that deep, so 1 or 2 wins. I mean, again, if you beat Denise Keelholtz, you can get a title shot in that division. So honestly, if you get a good win and just kind of make some noise, you're probably going to get awarded that shot.
Fight at 55 between Alessandro Botti, the Italian, taking on Terry Brazier, former 2-division champ over in Bama. Lost his last fight to Chris Bungard, which, man, I was so surprised that he lost that fight. But yeah, Botti, a guy who competed with Venator at one point. You see a lot of prospects come out of there, different fighters. I know Carlo Pedersoli is one of those names. And one of the fighters that he fought over there was Stefano Paterno, who at one point, very, very recently, was a Cage Warriors welterweight champ. Lost that to Ross Houston in his last fight. This is a fun one. I've got Brazier again. Yes, but listen, I'm almost...
We've had Brazier before and he hasn't pulled through. So
I'm almost surprised that fight is on the prelims. Another one, Walter Gahadze taking on Oliver Enkamp. Enkamp making his Bellator debut. Man, the UFC did him dirty.
They really did.
Put him up against really tough fighters in Danny Roberts and Nordine Taleb. Man, don't give your worst enemy those two guys.
The good thing is, in the Nordine Taleb fight, he did show a few good positions, a few good signs. There was a lot of spinning techniques. They're just kind of wasted, though. It reminds me of, and I know they're different, but Zabit does kind of the same thing. He throws a lot of spinning techniques, but he doesn't hit anyone, so they just kind of drain you of your stamina. Oliver Enkamp kind of has that same problem where he'll throw a bunch of flashy stuff, and then he just kind of like pauses for a second. And that's how we kind of saw Danny Roberts beat him. He threw, I think it was a left leg kick. Danny Roberts grabbed it, hit him once, knocked him out. Like, you can beat Oliver Enkamp if you just wait. That's really all you have to do. He does have a lot of good skills. He just hasn't been able to show and put them all together. But I'm saying that because I saw him fight Nordine Taleb and Danny Roberts, two very good fighters. So maybe against Walter Gahadze, he could show that he's a much better fighter than I previously thought. But we don't know yet.
I mean, you look at it, 6 feet to 6 feet, 170 to 170.
They're virtually identical.
I think Gahadze is going to have an advantage just in the size. And realistically, you look at the quality of opponents that he's had as well. equally, matched, and I think it's going to be a good fight. I think it's a good pairing for Camp. Personally, I'd like to see him fight maybe with some lower ranked guys to build him up. I mean,
fight Glory Buffando next.
Yeah, Glory Buffando taking on Keith McCabe. Glory Buffando 5-3, knocked out Charlie Ward, who's on this card.
He has
by
terrible
throwing him.
cardio and oddly good striking. And no ground game.
There's a reason why you're not seeing Glory Buffando in the UFC anymore, and you're seeing him on a Bellator prelim card. But this fight coming up is a fight that I really scratch my head. Nathan Grayson got cut from Cage Warriors because he couldn't make weight at 125, so they stripped him of the belt and cut him. And then Bellator picked him up.
Might as well.
Bitchin' pickup. Taking on Franz Malambo, who fought for the title with Brave at one point, had 2 fights against Stephen Lohman, who was champ over there. He's a good fighter. He's a guy that fights out of SBG, so he's going to have those quality of training partners in those lower weight classes. This is going to be a fun fight if you're paying attention. Listen, I could sell you every single week on Bellator undercards, and I could tell you that 1 and 2 fighters are great, and you should watch them.
I mean, they're worth watching.
This is one of those fights that if you're a fight fan, you got to be watching Nathan Grayson every time he fights.
Yeah.
Kevin Fryer taking on John Redmond. I don't care.
I'm pretty sure he works at Best Buy in town. I don't know who he is.
John Redmond's fought decent opponents. His last fight was Bellator 187 when he fought Charlie Ward. When he had Conor McGregor fight... who did he fight?
Mark Goddard.
Yeah, fought I can't even talk. Fought Mark Goddard. And listen, it was ridiculous. But that fight, who gives a damn? Chris Bungard taking on Charlie Leary. Another fun one because, like we said, Bungard won his debut. Actually, he's got 2 wins in Bellator. Taking on Charlie Leary. 2 realistic top contenders at 55. And a fun one. And listen, fight fans in North America might not be super jazzed about some of these undercard fights. You're going to see these guys permeate into North America.
Exactly.
They might keep them in Europe for a while. We've seen a definite interest from Bellator in Europe. Obviously, they have the European series. We've seen them invest a lot of money. They had the big signings last summer. Now we're starting to see, hey, these guys are legit. You should be paying attention to them. On this main card, it's it's a stacked one. Again, we picked this over the UFCs. You got Aaron Chalmers coming off a tough loss, taking on Fred Freeman. It's a winnable fight. They're not Picoing him. They're giving him a winnable one. And listen,
imagine if he fought Pico.
They gave him a winnable fight in his last one too. But you got Charlie Ward taking on Justin Moore. Listen,
Charlie Ward is a subpar fighter who's got a big name as a best friend. That's pretty much it.
Fabian Edwards.
Fabian Edwards is a bad MFer though.
The French Jonathan Bosuku. This is a tough one for Bosuku. You're taking on a guy who's looked great in Bama.
Got the nice up kicks too.
Looked great in his first run in Bellator, and in the second run, that slow burn of Fabian Edwards. They're giving him a decent strength of schedule to build him up. And while he didn't look good against former Cage Warriors middleweight champ Lee Chadwick, in his last fight, he looked like a world beater. Fabian Edwards, I honestly do. And listen, his brother Leon is great, and I think he's got...
Craig also once said Craig White was going to be in the top 10, but continue.
Leon Edwards keeps building every single fight, and he keeps looking better. And obviously, he's getting a tough test in RDA coming up. UFC San Antonio in the main event. But Fabian Edwards is a guy, if you're a Bellator fan, if you're a 185 fan, watch out for Fabian Edwards. He's really good. And I think this is a fun fight.
I do too. And Fabian Edwards has such a well-rounded game that you don't really have to handpick his opponents as much as maybe other people, because it doesn't matter what skill set the opponent brings to him. He's going to kind of have the skills to deal with it no matter what. So, Fabian's definitely a guy you got to watch on the come up.
Thick
boy.
Thick. Michael Shipman taking on Costello Vanstinas. This is in a Bellator had Fight of the Nights. This has Fight of the Night written all over it. Mike Shipman, look at his record. Finish City, Costello Vanstinas, great kickboxer, beat Chris Honeycutt in his last one, and I did have him winning that fight. It was by split. Honeycutt's a great wrestler, so you know that Costello Vanstinas, the striker, has good takedown defense against Chris Honeycutt, the wrestler. Mike Shipman knocks people out into the stratosphere. Yeah. He hits so damn hard. People sleep on Mike Shipman. I know people are starting to realize how good he is. And listen, the Carl Noon fight at Bellator London, the first one, he beat him in 10 seconds, I believe. And listen, Carl Noon hadn't fought in like 5-6 years. But in his last fight, Mike Shipman looked great. Honestly, and listen, all kudos to James Lynch. And he talked about this fight at length and had Costello Vanstinas winning it. I think this fight has Mike Shipman written all over it.
I've got Costello, but anyways.
And if we look at the odds, not odds on this this particular fight, but listen, I think it's a great one there. And if you move forward, you've got Melvin Manhoof taking on Kent Coppinen. Kent Coppinen, a guy that's fought a lot of fighters that we've talked about before. At the same time, he won his last fight against Alessio Sakara, the main event, Bellator 211. It was the same day as Bellator 212, I believe.
Bellator, let's not do that anymore.
Yeah, it was weird. You also had Bidet Johnson doing the in-cage announcing versus Michael C. Williams, who was over in North America. I like Bidet Johnson. Bring him back. He does Bama as well. I think he does a good job. But Melvin Manhoof, a guy who, kickboxing champ, he'll knock your socks off.
He knocked out Mark Hunt in 10 seconds.
Yeah, and mixed results lately in MMA and kickboxing, but listen, this should be a fun fight. It's a tough one to try and pick.
Melvin Manhoef's a glass cannon. He's just like a smaller Alistair Overeem at this point without the submission game. I do think Manhoef's going to win this just because he is ridiculously explosive even into his later years, but it's going to be a good fight.
Listen, as far as ridiculous odds are concerned,
James Gallagher is going to choke this boy unconscious.
James Gallagher is a 5-1 favorite at this point against Jeremiah Labiano. If you want to hear a great interview, go over to Kumite TV, listen to Jeremiah Labiano's interview we did before this. There's going to be a link up there for that. I think it's going to be a more competitive fight than most. At 12-6 is Labiano. You know, if you look at his overall body of work, he has fought some tough competition in the past. They wouldn't have put this fight so high up if it wasn't two big names. And for Labiano, listen, he fought guys like Joe Soto and Ricky Simone. It was a split decision loss there for Labiano, but still a tough strength of schedule for Gallagher. He won his last fight off that Bandejas loss. But yeah, I think Gallagher is going to be able to get it done here. Listen, I'm surprised that the odds aren't closer, realistically.
I am too. I mean, Gallagher's got a lot of hype coming in with him. He did win his last fight, so people kind of forget that sour taste in their mouth from the Bandejas fight. But, I mean, he should be the favorite, in all honesty.
Co-main event, this would have been a fun fight if both these guys fought in the same era.
2012 would have been dope if this fight
If
was
they
happening.
fought in the same era in the UFC, you've got forever prospect Eric Silva taking on Paul Daly, who punched Josh Koscheck after the bell. He's that guy.
Can you blame him, though?
And I thought his fight with MVP was closer than most people did.
I thought he won.
That was his last fight.
He took down MVP.
Yeah, I thought he won too. But Eric Silva. So Eric Silva, listen, he left the UFC on 2 losses. He won his LFA fight where he got knocked down a couple times and won by submission. Then he came back in and made a big... There was a big splash. Listen, Eric Silva and Yaroslav Amosov, this is the alternate for the Welterweight Grand Prix. And Yaroslav Amosov just... he went into the janitor's closet. He pulled out the mop and the bucket. And he mopped the floor with Eric Silva. And the prospect is no longer a prospect. We all know that.
Oh, 1 or 2 more wins, though, Craig. He's right back in it.
Realistically, yeah. But Paul Daly, I think, is going to be able to get it done here. Listen, we know his defensive wrestling's pretty good. He still hits really hard. He has that output. And I just think Eric Silva, listen, he is a decent grappler and he's good at some things. He's got a weak chin, and at this point in his career, I don't think he's going to be able to get it done.
Yeah, if you get dropped by just some guy in LFA, imagine what happens when Paul Daly hits you clean. I mean, Paul Daly has God-given knockout power unlike anything most people have ever seen. So if Paul Daly lands clean, he's going to break Eric Silva's face. The only thing is, if Silva can get a takedown early on, his jiu-jitsu is still world-class. He could be able to get the submission. But yeah, I think Craig picked the right one. Paul Daly by stop.
Our main event
I think this is going to be the most one-sided fight on the card, but continue, Craig.
The evening. This is the biggest fight of the weekend. This is bigger than Bare Knuckle. This is bigger than UFC Greenville. This is the fight that you have to watch. And listen, it's not going to draw the same kind of numbers due to the tape delay. But Gegard Mousasi taking on Rafael Lovato Jr. So let's see. Rafael Lovato Jr. has been on the program. We've spoken with him.
I'll be very respectful.
You can head back and you can watch that interview. Gegard Mousasi coming off a successful title defense, a champ fight against Rory MacDonald. He looked great. Gegard Mousasi hasn't lost in quite a while. Gegard Mousasi never should have left the UFC, and I wish he fought Robert Whittaker.
I think Whittaker beats him. But
in this fight, Gegard Mousasi taking on the BJJ ace of Lovato Jr. Lovato Jr. obviously undefeated. He's looked great lately, and Mousasi is 6-1 favorite in this fight, which I think makes sense.
Justified.
We talked about this before we came on. It's kind of tough when you look at a fight like this, and you're obviously going to think, hey, well, if the fight goes to the mat, Lovato Jr. is going to win. If the fight's on the feet, Mousasi wins. And typically I don't agree with that kind of stuff, and Matt and I are going to disagree right here. I think realistically, yeah, if the fight goes to the ground, Lovato Jr. is going to win. In this one, it's you look at Naaman Gracie taking on Rory MacDonald. It's kind of similar, the type of styles. Yeah, just down 15 pounds. Gracie had some decent spots in that fight.
Difference is Gracie showed good striking in that, and that's not something we've seen in any of Lovato Jr.'s
Lovato Jr. is gonna strike like a BJJ guy, like
you can't do that against
like a
Aaron
Ronnie
Mousasi.
Yaya, like Damian Maia. You're gonna see that from him. Looping shots. He's gonna try and close distance, and if he gets caught, he's gonna get caught and finished by Gegard Mousasi.
Very badly.
Lovato Jr., I will say, has beaten strikers in the past. Kevin Holland's a name that he fought in
Kevin
LFA.
Holland.
In LFA.
That's Gegard Mousasi.
I know.
He's one of the best ever.
It was his, like, second or third
I'm just
MMA
saying.
fights. Lovato Jr.'s been built up, but he's also taken on tough tests. He took on John Salter. That was like a BJJ wet dream. And then in his last fight, he was able to get...
I'm so upset that you're comparing John Salter to Gegard Mousasi.
In his last fight, he was able to get a really big win there. And realistically, I think Lovato Jr., listen, he's getting slept on. It's kind of tough because he's 35 years old at the same time. But yeah, in that Salter fight, it really propelled him. That was the title challenger fight. And we get this. And I know we're more than likely both going to pick Gegard Mousasi.
No shit, Craig.
But
wait, hold up. You're telling me that we're both going to pick probably the best middleweight who's ever lived against the guy who's 9-0 who has good jiu-jitsu.
He fought Mark Hunt at one point.
Yeah, he beat him by armbar too.
But it's going to be a closer fight.
No, it's not. Gegard Mousasi is going to run over Rafael Lovato Jr. Pains me to say because I do like Lovato Jr. It just stylistically...
Rafael.
Yes, you have to look at it this way. Lovato Jr. is not a great wrestler. Gegard Mousasi has tremendous takedown defense. So the only way that Lovato is going to take Gegard down is if he somehow drops him. That's not going to happen. Lovato doesn't have big power. Gegard has a good chin.
If we get into the clinch, Gegard's got all sorts of different things he can do. He can crouch and put his hands on the mat and try and work an illegal knee.
Chris Weidman him.
Yeah, exactly. Or, listen, he can catch him with elbows. He can catch him with strikes. If Lovato tries to kind of get in so close, he's going to be able to get the knockout. But if Lovato is successful in getting the fight to the mat,
even then, though, I don't think that Lovato has one shot, one kill where it's, all I have to do is take you down, and in 20 seconds you're going to be able to find that submission. He's going to have to get the takedown within the first minute of a round because it's going to take longer than a minute to submit Gegard Mousasi. That's the thing that you're not thinking about. You're thinking, if he takes him down, he's just going to finish it. He's not Brian Ortega, and even Brian Ortega can't finish guys in 1 second. Like, it takes time to set things up, and especially against a fighter who has so much experience and who's so good at all aspects of MMA like Gegard Mousasi. I'm telling you this. Rafael Lovato Jr. has a 0% chance of winning this fight.
There's no silent letters in there.
Rafael Lovato Jr. is not going to win this fight. And it pains me to say because I've really enjoyed watching his performances, but this is going to be a very one-sided fight.
This card to me is, listen, the tape delay takes away from it, but as far as this card's concerned, a B+ to an A. This is a really solid card. You should definitely check it out. But you know what else you should check out? All right, so the biggest thing that we have going on this weekend, we're going to be live at NEF 39 All-American from Lewiston, Maine. We started the show by saying that, but listen, it's actually a great card. 4 title fights on there, 2 amateur fights. You got 2 pro titles on the line. Main event, Josh Harvey, and he's going to be taking on a tough test and a guy who's coming into the state, the home state of Harvey, and Jordan Downey. Josh Harvey's one of those guys. I know Max Friedman, if you're watching, you're really high on him. There's a lot of people out there that are. That draw on his record was to Joe Giannetti.
No shame in that.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, Joe Giannetti lost his last fight last weekend. But a good fight there. You've also got Jesse Erickson coming off quite a layoff, taking on Dylan Lockhart, another guy who's coming into the state trying to win the vacant lightweight title. You got Keegan Hornstra and Dominic Jones as a pro fight. You've also got Nate Boucher taking on Robert Presley for the 125-pound amateur title. And Glory Watson on a 4-fight win streak taking on Kerry Hill. Somebody else who's coming into Maine trying to win a title. Other than that, some decent fights on there as well. You look down through the card. I know even looking at some of these amateur records, Brandon Maia-Favens is a guy who's taken on Cody Kilton. That's a fight that I'm looking forward to. John Assom's a guy who actually did look good in his last fight at 0-1. But realistically, a lot of great fighters on this card. It's going to be a really fun time from the Androscoggin Bank Coliseum. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you can catch it. If you see me there, come up. Hey,
say hi.
I'm approachable. I have stickers.
Well, kind of.
People like stickers. But yeah, I'll be there rocking the Black Fight Night picture. You'll see me. We're actually going to have, where is it?
Tiny cameras.
Little break in the action. We're going to have some GoPros there. We're going to be taking some video. Obviously, I've got the camera. We're going to be taking pics. We're going to have live results. You can find those Fight Night pics .net for the live results from NEF 39, the video content, the pictures, all that. And listen, you saw with Jorgen De Castro on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series getting the knockout. there's some big stars that can emerge from these regional promotions. Josh Harvey's one of those guys that's right on the cusp of a Bellator, UFC. Obviously, we saw it too with Matt Probin in Bellator.
There's a reason. You see it on Twitter too, and these people are all right. It is always worth going to a regional show. You can think, oh, should I spend like $60 on a pay-per-view or $20 to go watch a regional show? Yes, you might not know the names, but the excitement level's still there. They all train the same things. And it's always worth going.
They just about or always do sell out these events.
Exactly.
There's a sellout streak with NEF going on right now. At the same time, they put on a great show. The promoters,
great atmosphere.
Matt and Nick, great guys. They spend a lot of time with the fans and everyone talking. Everybody, loves those guys and has great things to say about them. And I will say, this is the first promotion that I covered live, and it helped me build my own personal brand. So if you're out there and you're looking to become a professional MMA media member, DMs are always open between us. At Craig Allen FNP, at Matt Allen FNP. If you're ever looking for advice, if you get anything, listen, constructive criticism. Somebody last week said, hey, listen, the episode was a little long. Could you toss in some timestamps for the fights that I'm looking for? 100%. I went back and did that. So
it's actually really good advice.
I really
hurt
appreciate
my feelings a little bit, but it's okay.
Didn't hurt anybody's feelings.
I cried in my sleep.
But yeah, you can find us at NEF39, and if you got any questions, anything you want to toss our way, do so. We like to help people out, and listen, we appreciate the feedback. So that just about does it for this week.
It does.
In MMA, we got 3 great cards, including NEF 39 coming up this weekend. You can find us in Lewiston, Maine. You got BKFC. Don't buy it. It's $54.99 Canadian, which is a slap in the face.
Spoiler alert, Artem Lolov's not going to win. I'm sorry, guys.
Either way, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, CastBox, iTunes.
Anywhere podcasts are available.
Give us a sub. Give us a like. We really do appreciate it.
Make sure you hit the bell icon on YouTube so you can stay up to date with all of our new videos.
100%. And with that, we will see you again this weekend from Lewiston, Maine.